Today we're about to jump into some advice that's nearly 1,000 years old, but you're going to see it feels like it was written just for us, right now, for our world that's just drowning in information. So yeah, let's get right into this incredible story.
So, this is really the big question, isn't it? I mean, think about it. We are constantly consuming information, books, articles, videos like this one. But what is the actual point of all of it, if it doesn't fundamentally change how you live your life?
So picture this. Way back in the 11th century, a student asks his teacher, the brilliant scholar Al-Ghazali, this exact question. This student, he'd studied for years. He'd mastered all these different subjects. But he had this nagging feeling, this anxiety. He was worried that out of everything he'd learned, he wouldn't know what actually mattered when things got real. So he writes this letter to his master, Al-Ghazali, and just lays it all out there.
And you can feel the urgency in his question, right? His fear was deep. He was basically saying, have I wasted my life? All these years hitting the books? Was it all for nothing?
And to really drive it home, the student quotes a famous prayer from the Prophet Muhammad. He says, "I seek Allah's refuge from the knowledge which is of no benefit."
Wow.
That just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures his fear. He was terrified of becoming, a human encyclopedia, just full of facts but with no real wisdom, no real value to show for it.
Okay, so how does Ghazali respond? Well, his reply was direct, unflinching. He doesn't pat the student on the back and say, there. No, he goes straight for the jugular, right to the heart of the issue.
He says, knowledge without action is insanity. Let's just pause on that for a second. Insanity. He wasn't pulling any punches here. For Ghazali, the gap between what you know and what you do wasn't just some minor flaw, it was a kind of madness.
And to make this point impossible to forget, Ghazali tells a story, a really powerful metaphor. He says, okay, imagine a warrior. He's out in the middle of the desert.
And this guy isn't just carrying any old weapon. He has 10 Indian swords, the best of the best. And that detail is so important, right? The swords, they're a symbol for all that powerful, sharp knowledge he's acquired.
But then a huge lion attacks him, and he never even draws a single blade. And there it is. That's the whole point. What good are all those incredible swords if you don't use them when it actually matters? All that knowledge is completely worthless if you don't apply it to the real challenges, the real lions in your life. Ghazali basically calls this abstract knowledge. He says this was the big mistake made by some of the philosophers of his time. It's this idea, this comforting lie, really, that just having the information is enough, that it can somehow save you without you having to do the hard work of actually living by it. So, okay, he's diagnosed the problem, but what's the solution? Well, Ghazali then lays out the cure. He gives his student a super clear path to turn all that learning from just a pile of useless facts into real, life-changing wisdom.
And the answer isn't go read more books. Nope. It's a whole framework for how to live. It's built on 3 pillars. First, you've got to purify your intention. Really ask yourself, why am I learning this? Second, evaluate your deeds. You have to constantly check if what you're doing matches up with what you know. And third, act according to divine law. Basically, make sure your actions are aligned with a solid moral code.
And to really hammer home that second point about action, Ghazali pulls out a quote from Ali ibn Abi Talib. Those who think that they can achieve their aims without work are dreaming. It's so simple, but so true, right? You can't just hope for the best. Real success in anything is totally impossible without actually putting in the work.
Okay, so now we get to what is really the heart of the matter. Ghazali makes this incredibly important distinction about why we even seek knowledge to begin with. This is where it all clicks into place. He basically lays out 2 paths. On one side, you have worldly knowledge. This is when you're learning just to get status, to feel superior, to win debates. But on the other side, you have beneficial knowledge, and that's for action, for building character, for salvation. The key question is, which path are you on? Are you learning to show off, or are you learning to grow?
And then he drops this quote, which is just haunting. "O my servant, you have purified yourself in the sight of mankind for years, and not for 1 hour have you purified yourself for me." It's his powerful gut check, right? A reminder that what other people think of you doesn't matter nearly as much as the state of your own heart, your own intention.
So let's bring this all home. What can we, you and I, take away from this conversation from the 11th century? Because this advice is just as relevant today as it was back then. It's absolutely timeless. So,
Let's boil it down. What are the big takeaways here? First, knowledge is a tool, not a trophy you stick on a shelf. Second, it's action, driven by a pure intention that gives that knowledge any real value. Third, your life is ultimately measured by your deeds, not by how many books you've read. And finally, real wisdom, true wisdom, is simply living what you've learned. It's knowledge in motion.
And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Ghazali said that what's being looked at isn't your appearance, but your heart. But we live in a world that is obsessed with what it can see, our actions, our results. So, in a world like that, how do we even begin the really hard work of reforming our intentions, the very source of everything we do?